There comes a point in every soul's journey where the heart begins to whisper, is this all there is? We chase careers, relationships, success, and approval, believing that meaning lies somewhere out there. Yet, when the lights fade and the world grows quiet, we feel a deep emptiness, a longing that nothing material can fill. This longing is not a weakness, it's a divine signal. It's your soul remembering its origin. Meaning in life begins when we stop running from that voice and turn back to the one who placed it within us. In Islam, the secret to a meaningful life isn't about how much you have, but who you are connected to. True fulfillment flows not from possessions or praise, but from purpose, the purpose Allah created you for. Every hardship, every delay, every joy, and every heartbreak is a divine thread woven into the fabric of your story. When you start seeing life not as random chaos, but as a carefully written love letter from your creator, or everything is there. The pain begins to purify, not destroy. The waiting begins to teach, not torment. Our worth is not determined by the world's applause, but by the sincerity of our hearts in the eyes of Allah. The Prophet depicts it, indeed, in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. That piece is the heart. A meaningful life is one where the heart is alive, connected, soft, and anchored in remembrance. This world is temporary, but your soul is eternal. When you live for the eternal, even the smallest act becomes sacred. A smile, a prayer, a moment of patience. So if you are searching for meaning, don't look further. Look deeper. The answer isn't in more, it's in returning. Returning to prayer. Returning to gratitude. Returning to the one who never left, even when you drifted. Because true peace doesn't come when everything around you is perfect. It comes when your heart finally rests. Meaning begins with remembrance. When the heart remembers its creator, life begins to make sense again. There's a deep ache that lives in every human soul. A restlessness that nothing in this world seems to soothe. We try to silence it with distraction, success, love, entertainment, or recognition. But no matter how far we run, that ache follows us. That ache is not a curse, it's a call. A call to return to the one who fashioned our hearts in the first place. The heart was created to know Allah, to remember Him, and to find peace in that remembrance. Without it, no amount of worldly pleasure can satisfy the soul. When you wake up in the morning and the first thought is the weight of your worries, life feels heavy. But when you begin your day remembering the one who controls all outcomes, the same day feels late. Dhikr, the remembrance of Allah, is not just the movement of the tongue, it is the awakening of the heart. It is a shift from living in anxiety to living in awareness. It's realizing that no situation is outside His knowledge. No tear goes unnoticed, and no struggle is wasted. When the believer remembers Allah, life's chaos begins to find order, and the heart begins to breathe again. Every soul is searching for meaning, yet most look for it in the wrong places. The world tells us meaning comes from doing more, achieving more, owning more. But Islam teaches that meaning begins not with doing, but with being in a state of remembrance. It is not about the noise outside, but the stillness within. When you say Subhanallah, you're not merely uttering words. You're declaring that nothing is greater than Him. When you say Iber 6 Alhamdulillah, you're not just expressing gratitude. You're aligning your heart with divine wisdom, accepting that everything, even what hurts, carries purpose. And when you say Affects Allahu Akbar, you remind yourself that no fear, no failure, and no heartbreak is greater than the one who can heal it. Remembrance transforms the way we see the world. Suddenly, the mundane becomes sacred. A simple walk becomes reflection. A silent tear becomes a prayer. Every breath becomes an act of worship. When the heart remembers Allah, the world no longer feels meaningless. You begin to see beauty in the broken moments and mercy in the trials. You begin to understand that what you lost was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to bring you back to Him. Because Allah removes the things we cling to, so we can finally cling to Him. The Quran says, verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Rest, something everyone is searching for, yet so few truly for. People look for peace in possessions, relationships, or achievements, but true rest is not found in the temporary, it's found in the eternal. The heart that remembers Allah doesn't escape pain, but it learns to endure it with purpose. It learns to see beyond the moment. It learns to trust the plan even when the path feels uncertain. Because when Allah lives in your heart, meaning no longer depends on what happens outside of it. Remembrance also brings clarity. When we forget Allah, we become lost, chasing shadows, attaching to what will one day fade. But when we remember Him, we remember who we are. We remember that we are souls before we are bodies, that our worth is not measured by likes or wealth, but by sincerity and faith. In remembering Him, we remember our purpose to worship, to serve, to love for His sake. That is where life begins to feel meaningful again. When every action becomes an offering, every struggle a step closer to Him. Sometimes remembrance is not loud. It's not always in long prayers or eloquent words. It's in the quiet moments. When you choose patience instead of anger, forgiveness instead of resentment, trust instead of despair. That too is dhikr. Remembrance is when you look at your pain and say, Allah knows. It's when you face uncertainty and whisper, Allah will provide. It's when you fall and still turn back saying, Allah, forgive me. Every time you remember Him, your heart is watered again and the seeds of peace begin to grow. The truth is, meaning doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from knowing who to turn to when you don't. The world will never stop changing, but Allah never changes. His mercy remains constant, His love remains infinite. So remember Him in joy, in grief, in confusion, and in calm. Because when your heart lives in remembrance, your life gains direction. And when you walk with Allah, even the darkest path begins to shine with purpose. Meaning begins with remembrance, and remembrance begins with the heart's return to its Creator. Purpose over pleasure. This is where the true depth of life begins. The modern world teaches us that happiness is the ultimate goal, that pleasure is the purpose. We are told to follow our hearts wherever they lead, to chase whatever feels good, and to run from anything that brings discomfort. But in this endless chase, we often find ourselves more lost, more anxious, and more empty. Because pleasure fades. It excites for a moment, but it cannot sustain the soul. What we truly need is not constant pleasure. We need purpose. And in Islam, purpose is not something we create for ourselves. It's something already written for us by the one who created us. Allah did not create us to live in the pursuit of worldly satisfaction alone. He says in the Quran, and I did not create jinn and mankind except to worship me. This verse isn't limiting, it's liberating. It reminds us that every act, no matter how small, can become meaningful when done for His sake. Worship in Islam isn't confined to prayer and fasting. It's how we live, how we love, how we speak, and how we treat others. When you work with sincerity, that's worship. When you forgive for the sake of Allah, that's worship. When you choose patience over anger, faith over fear, and integrity over convenience, that's purpose. Pleasure is fleeting, but purpose anchors the soul. Pleasure promises ease, but purpose promises growth. The two are not always in harmony. Sometimes living with purpose means walking away from what feels good in the moment. It means resisting temptations, staying humble when praised, and grateful when deprived. It means trusting Allah's wisdom even when His plan contradicts your desires. There are times when you'll have to say no to your lower self in order to say is to your higher calling. That's the essence of faith. Choosing what's right over what's easy, choosing the eternal over the temporary. Think about the prophets. Peace be upon them all. None of them lived lives centered around comfort or pleasure. Their journeys were filled with struggle, rejection, and sacrifice. Yet, they were the most peaceful of hearts. Because they lived with divine purpose. They understood that true peace doesn't come from the absence of hardship, but from the presence of meaning. Their eyes were fixed not on the fleeting pleasures of this world, but on the eternal reward waiting in the next. When you live for purpose, your pain becomes part of your path, not the end of it. Pleasure often blinds us to what truly matters. It convinces us to take shortcuts, to seek validation, to cling to things that were never meant to last. It gives momentary highs but leaves behind lasting emptiness. Purpose, on the other hand, may test you, stretch you, even break you. But it also rebuilds you. It gives weight to your steps, depth to your days, and peace to your heart. A meaningful life is not a comfortable one. It's a purposeful one. And when your purpose aligns with all is well, even the hardest days carry light. When we choose pleasure over purpose, we become slaves to our desires. We let emotions rule decisions, and when pleasure fades, as it always does, we're left hollow, searching for the next distraction. But when we choose purpose, we become servants of Allah, and in that servitude, there's freedom. Because no pleasure can compare to the sweetness of knowing you are walking in the direction your Creator designed for you. You begin to see that every test is a reminder, every delay a mercy, and every loss a redirection. The heart that lives for Allah doesn't depend on constant happiness to feel whole. It depends on faith. Purpose gives meaning to sacrifice. It teaches you that saying no to what your nafs desires isn't deprivation, it's protection. It's saving your soul from being consumed by momentary satisfaction. The people who live for pleasure may seem to be winning on the outside, but often they are restless within. Those who live for purpose may appear to lose in the short term, but they are building something eternal. There is a quiet strength in those who choose Allah's path even when the world mocks them for it. That strength comes from knowing that you were created for something higher, something beyond this temporary world. So when you face a choice between pleasure and purpose, remember what truly lasts. Pleasure fades as quickly as it comes, but purpose continues to echo long after you're gone. Live not for what gives you comfort, but for what gives you meaning. The real joy of life comes not from indulging every desire, but from aligning every desire with your Creator's. And when you live that way, when you choose purpose over pleasure, you'll find a deeper happiness, one that doesn't depend on circumstance but flows from the peace of knowing that your life is exactly where it's meant to be, in service, in surrender, and in remembrance of Allah. Pain is purification. These words hold a wisdom that the soul often understands long before the mind does. Every human being will taste pain. It comes in different forms. The loss of someone we love, the betrayal of trust, the disappointment of unfulfilled dreams, the exhaustion of struggle. Yet behind every ache, there lies a divine message, a whisper from the Creator saying, come back to me. Pain, in its rawest form, is not a punishment. It is a purifier, a sacred fire that burns away the illusions, attachments, and false securities that distract the heart from what truly matters. In moments of comfort, we forget. When life flows smoothly, when plans unfold effortlessly, when everything seems secure, our hearts begin to settle into this world as if it were home. But pain comes as a reminder. This is not home. The purpose of pain in Islam is not to break you, but to wake you. It shakes the heart so it remembers the one who is in control of all things. The Prophet said, "As no fatigue, nor disease, nor sorrow, nor sadness, nor hurt, nor distress befalls a Muslim, even if it were the prick he receives from a thorn, but that Allah expiates some of his sins for that." That means every tear shed in patience, every sleepless night, every silent struggle is washing away the stains of sin and softening the heart for closeness to Allah. When the believer faces hardship, something beautiful happens. The veil between the heart and Allah begins to lift. Suddenly, the dua becomes deeper, the prayer more sincere, the remembrance more constant. Pain humbles the soul, it strips away arrogance, and makes us realize how powerless we truly are without His mercy. The same person who once forgot to pray in ease begins to cry in sujud during hardship. That transformation, that return, is the essence of purification. Because sometimes, the pain you begged Allah to remove is the very pain that is returning you to Him. There is a hidden mercy in every trial, even when you cannot see it. Sometimes Allah allows pain not because He wants to hurt you, but because He wants to heal you. There are poisons in the heart: pride, envy, attachment, love of this world that only pain can cleanse. When the soul becomes heavy with distractions, pain cuts through the noise and reminds you of what's real. It teaches you reliance, it teaches you patience. It teaches you to let go of control and to trust in the one who never fails. And in that surrender, the soul finds peace. Pain purifies love too. When you love someone for the sake of Allah, your love becomes selfless, free from ego. But when love is for the sake of the world, for attention, status, or control, pain exposes its fragility. Allah allows heartbreak so that your heart can be reattached, not to people, but to Him. What feels like loss is often redirection. What feels like an ending is often the beginning of something purer. The pain that brings you closer to Allah is better than the pleasure that distances you from Him. There are moments when pain feels unbearable, when you look to the heavens and ask, why me? But even then, Allah is near. He says in the Quran verse, and we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger, and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient. Allah does not say if you are tested, but when. Tests are part of the journey, but within every test, there is a promise, the promise that patience will never go unrewarded, that no pain is ever lost, and that no believer suffers except that they are being elevated in rank. What you lose in this world through pain, you gain in closeness to Him. Pain also teaches empathy. Once you've been broken, you begin to understand the silent struggles of others. You become gentler, softer, more compassionate. Your heart, once hardened by comfort, becomes a vessel for mercy. This too is purification, the cleansing of the soul from selfishness to service. Allah uses pain not only to purify you for Himself, but also to prepare you to serve others with sincerity and humility. One day, when you look back, you'll realize that the pain you thought would destroy you actually built you. It was the fire that refined you, the storm that strengthened your faith. You will thank Allah not for the hardship itself, but for the person you became through it, for the closeness, the wisdom, and the peace that pain brought into your life. Pain is temporary, but the lessons it plants in the soul are eternal. So when the weight of the world feels too heavy, remembered, Allah never burdens a soul beyond what it can bear. Every hardship is measured, every tear counted, every sigh recorded, and with every moment of patience, you are being cleansed, elevated, and drawn closer to the one who loves you more than you can imagine. Pain is not the end, it's a bridge that takes the believer from attachment to surrender, from weakness to favor, and from the illusion of control to the reality of divine dependence. Pain, when endured with trust, becomes light, and that light leads you home. See with the eyes of faith. This is one of the most transformative ways to experience life. To see with faith is to look beyond what the eyes can perceive and to trust what the heart knows to be true. It means understanding that this world, with all its chaos, heartbreak, and uncertainty, is not random. It is perfectly designed by the one who never makes mustu. It means believing that even when everything seems to fall apart, It is actually falling into place according to Allah's divine wisdom. The eyes of faith see purpose where others see pain, mercy where others see loss, and hope where others see. Every believer is tested in this vision. It's easy to have faith when everything is going right, when the doors open and the path is smooth. But real faith begins when the road becomes dark and you can't see what's ahead. That's when the eyes of the heart must take over. To see with the eyes of faith is to remember that Allah is still with you even when you can't feel Him. It's to whisper curse, Alhamdulillah, even when you don't understand the reason behind the trial. It's to know that Allah's silence is not absence, it's preparation. That He withholds only to give better, delays only to align the timing, and tests only to elevate you. Faith is not blind, it's insight. It's the ability to perceive meaning in moments when lujals. When Prophet Ibrahim was thrown into the fire, his eyes could see flames, but his heart saw safety because he knew Allah would protect him. When Maryam was alone and in pain, her eyes saw isolation, but her heart saw divine care as Allah sent provision and comfort from the unseen. When Prophet Yusuf was betrayed, imprisoned, and forgone, his eyes saw hardship, but his heart saw the unfolding of a greater plan that would one day lead to honor. Their secret was this: they didn't just see their situation, they saw the one behind it. Seeing with faith doesn't mean denying reality. It means understanding that reality itself is layered. There is what you see, and then there is what Allah is doing behind the veil of the unseen. Sometimes you will see loss, but behind that loss is protection. You may see rejection, but behind that rejection is redirection. You may see delay, but behind that delay is development, a slow, beautiful growth of your soul that only hardship can nurture. When the heart trusts Allah's plan more than it fears the unknown, peace begins to blossom even in the middle of confusion. The eyes of faith transform the way you interpret life. Suddenly, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is Allah teaching me through this? You stop seeing obstacles as punishments and start seeing them as invitations. Invitations to return, to trust, to surrender. Faith turns every challenge into a conversation with Allah. You start to understand that He never takes something from you unless He's about to give you something better. Maybe not in form, but always in meaning. And that is where the believer's strength lies, in knowing that every loss in this world is temporary, but what you gain through faith is eternal. There will be times when you pray and see no immediate answer. The eyes of fear will say, Allah has forgotten me. But the eyes of faith will say, Allah is preparing something better. When you look with faith, patience becomes easier because you realize that Allah's timing is not a delay, it's a design. His plan may take longer than you expect, but it's always more perfect than you imagine. The believer's heart rests not in what is seen, but in the certainty that Allah's promise never fails. Seeing with the eyes of faith also changes how you view. You begin to see people not just as they are, but as souls on their own journeys toward Allah. You judge less, empathize, and pray for those who hurt you instead of resenting them. Because faith teaches you that everything that crosses your path, every person, every moment, every experience, carries a divine lesson meant just for you. The eyes of faith teach you to walk through life with calm surrender. You stop chasing certainty from the world and start finding peace in Allah's decree. You begin to understand that even when the outcome isn't what you wanted, it's always what you needed. And the more you see signs of His mercy in everything, in the delay that saved you, in the heartbreak that shaped you, in the storm that purified you. To see with the eyes of faith is to live with the awareness that Allah is closer to you than your own heartbeat. It is to know that even in your darkest night, He is guiding you toward the dawn. It's to understand that every unanswered prayer, every hardship, and every moment of waiting is not a punishment, but a part of His divine conversation with your soul. When you live this, you no longer see the world as a place of random pain, but as a sacred classroom where every moment teaches you to return to Him. And in that return lies the secret to peace, a peace that does not depend on what you see, but on what you believe. Anchor your heart. These words hold the essence of inner peace in a world that constantly shifts beneath our feet. Life is full of change. People come and go. Plans succeed and fail. The seasons of the heart rise and fall, sometimes with joy, sometimes with grief. If your heart is tied to what changes, it will always be in turmoil. One moment you'll be lifted by happiness, and the next you'll be crushed by disappointment. But when your heart is anchored in the one who never changes, Allah, you find a peace that nothing in this world can take away. To anchor your heart means to root it so deeply in faith that no storm can uproot it. It's knowing that no matter what happens around you, you remain steady because you trust the one who controls it all. The winds of life may blow fiercely, the loss of loved ones earthly, the weight of failure, the fear of uncertainty, but the believer's heart does not drift aimlessly. It stays grounded in remembrance, in prayer, and in the assurance that Allah's decree is always for the best, even when it's painful. The heart is the most delicate part of us, easily attached, easily wounded, easily swayed. That's why the Prophet used to make this dua so often, O turner of hearts, keep my heart firm upon your religion. The most steadfast of souls sought protection for his heart. Because the heart is always in motion. It loves, it fears, it hopes, it breaks, and without anchoring it to Allah, it becomes lost in the waves of emotion. But when you anchor it in Him, love becomes safe, fear becomes purposeful, and pain becomes meaningful. We live in a time where everything invites our hearts to attach, to people, to success, to image, to control. We anchor our worth in things that are temporary, and then we wonder why we feel constantly anxious. The truth is, anything that can be taken away should never be the source of your peace. When you anchor your heart to wealth, peace leaves when wealth does. When you anchor it to relationships, peace leaves when people change. When you anchor it to control, peace leaves when life surprises you. But when your heart is anchored to Allah, the eternal, the constant, your peace remains because He remains. Anchoring the heart does not mean you stop caring or feeling. It doesn't mean you become numb to the world. It means you feel deeply, but without drowning. You love people sincerely, but you don't worship them. You strive for success, but you don't let failure define you. You experience pain, but you don't let it destroy your hope. Anchoring your heart in Allah allows you to move through life with balance, to give your best effort without being consumed by outcomes, because you know that whatever leaves your hands never leaves His control. When the heart is not anchored, it becomes restless, swinging between fear of the future and regret of the past. It looks for stability in people and circumstances that are as fragile as itself. But when the heart is anchored, it learns to rest in the present, in trust, in gratitude, in surrender. You begin to live with the calm understanding that every situation, good or bad, is part of your journey back to Allah. You stop fighting reality and start flowing with His decree, knowing that He never withholds except to give better. Anchoring the heart also means returning again and again when you drift, because no one stays anchored perfectly all the time. Faith rises and falls. Hope wavers. Fear creeps in, but every time you remember Allah, every time you pray, every time you whisper His name in the midst of your pain, you drop your anchor again. You bring your heart back to its true home, and every return softens you, humbles you, and strengthens you. When you anchor your heart in Allah, you stop expecting perfection from the world. You stop demanding that people never hurt you or that life never change. You accept that imperfection is part of this journey, a reminder that ultimate peace is not meant to be found here. This world was never designed to hold your heart fully. It was designed to guide it toward the one who can. Every disappointment becomes a sign pointing back to Him. Every heartbreak becomes a call to re-anchor, to trust again, to believe again. A heart anchored in Allah is not untouched by pain, but it is unbroken by it. It bends but does not shatter. It weeps but still believes. It gets tired but never gives up. Because deep down, it knows the truth that everything will eventually fade, but Allah will remain. And the heart that belongs to Him will always find its way back to peace. So, anchor your heart not in what comes and goes, but in the one who always is. Let your trust in Him be stronger than your fears, your love for Him deeper than your attachments, and your hope in Him greater than your despair. Because when your heart is anchored in Allah, you can walk through storms and still stand tall, calm, steady, and full of faith. Live for the eternal, these words hold the key to true freedom and peace. Everything in this world fades. The beauty, the wealth, the recognition, the success, all of it slips through our fingers no matter how tightly we hold on. We live in a world that constantly tells us to chase more possessions, more validation, more pleasure. Yet the more we chase, the more restless we become. The soul was not created for what perishes, it was created for what lasts forever. To live for the eternal is to rise above the noise of the temporary, to live with the awareness that this life is not the destination, but the journey toward something far greater, toward Allah and the eternal life to come. When you live for the eternal, your entire perspective shifts. You begin to see that this world, with all its glitter and distraction, is only a test, a place of preparation, not permanence. Allah says in the Quran, and what is the life of this world except amusement and diversion? But the home of the hereafter is best for those who fear Allah. That this verse reminds us that what many people live and die chasing, status, luxury, attention, are illusions compared to the everlasting joy of the next life. Living for the eternal doesn't mean you reject this world completely. It means you walk through it with wisdom. But you don't let it use you. You enjoy its blessings, but you don't let them own your heart. The world is filled with things that glitter but don't last. The prophets have told us that even if we owned a valleys, we would still desire another. That's the nature of the human being when the heart is tied to the temporary. It's never to the temporary, but when the heart begins to live for the eternal, even the smallest act becomes valuable. A sincere smile, a hidden channel, a prayer whispered in the dark, all of it echoes in eternity. You realize that real success is not measured in wealth or fame, but in the state of your heart when you meet your Creator. To live for the eternal is to constantly remind yourself that every choice you make has weight beyond this life. The words you speak, the deeds you perform, the way you treat people, they all leave a mark that will outlast you. The believer sees every opportunity not just as a moment, but as a seed for the hereafter. When you help someone in need, you're not just relieving their burden. You're building your bridge to Jannah. When you forgive someone who hurt you, you're not just freeing yourself. You're planting peace that will bloom eternally. Living for the eternal means thinking beyond the now, beyond the fleeting satisfaction of revenge, pride, or indulgence. It means asking, will this bring me closer to Allah or further away? This way of living brings a serenity that nothing in the material world can give. Because when your goal is eternal, temporary losses stop shaking you. You stop being devastated by rejection or consumed by success. You begin to understand that both are tests. One of patience, one of gratitude. You realize that the pain of this life is not meaningless. It's purifying you for something far more beautiful. The heart that lives for the eternal finds strength in knowing that every tear, every sacrifice, every silent act of faith is being written, seen, and will be rewarded by Allah in ways beyond imagination. Living for the eternal also changes how you love. You no longer love people for what they give you, but for the sake of Allah. You love with sincerity, with mercy, with the hope that your love leads both hearts closer to Him. And when you still find peace, because you know nothing is lost in the path to Allah. Even the pain of separation becomes an act of worship when you trust that Allah replaces every loss with something eternal. When you live for this world alone, every ending feels like a tragedy. But when you live for the eternal, every ending is just a beginning, a step toward what truly lasts. The Prophet Zir reminded us, be in this world as though you were a stranger or a traveler. A traveler doesn't build his home in a resting place. He keeps moving, focused on reaching his destination. In the same way, the believer moves through life with purpose, collecting good deeds like provisions for the journey ahead. Living for the eternal doesn't take you away from life. It gives life meaning. It makes every moment sacred, every action significant. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally, not because you fear losing this world, but because you hope to gain the next. You walk lightly on the earth, with humility and awareness that everything you see will one day return to dust, but your soul will not. Your soul is destined for eternity, and your choices today are shaping that eternal home. So live not for applause, not for possessions, not for fleeting pleasure, but for Allah, the eternal. Let your heart be anchored in the unseen, your actions guided by purpose, and your eyes fixed on the horizon of forever. Because when you live for the eternal, even the smallest moments of this temporary world become steps toward everlasting peace. The peace of a heart that finally reaches home in the gardens where nothing fades and where you will see the face of the one for whom you lived.